Hey guys, it's Corey from CM Images Photography. So today we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people. That would be planning a wedding. So most people don't really know what they're getting into until they've actually got both feet in the water and they realize, oh, there's a lot more to plan than I thought there was. So you got everything from the invitations, getting your dress and or suit, getting a photographer, video, getting the venue of course. So we're going to be talking about a few of those things today. Got a few simple tricks to help you make things a little bit smoother. So you might be asking first off, what does a photographer know about wedding planning? Well, if you think about it, I've been to over 200 weddings. So big weddings, small weddings, destination weddings, backyard barbecue weddings. So I've pretty much seen it all. I've seen things go right and I've seen things go kind of wrong. And I've been able to learn from other people's mistakes, figure out why those things went wrong, and in hindsight, come up with ways that could have avoided them. So today, you're going to have the benefit of learning from me, learning from other people's mistakes. So let's get started. Once you've got your wedding date picked out, now you've got to figure out which vendors you want to hire for your wedding. Photographer, DJ, band, limousine, all those kinds of things. But the one that should be at the top of your list is your venue. Venues can only book a small number of weddings on any given day, sometimes as little as one if it's a small place, and they tend to fill up pretty quickly. So that needs to be at the top of your list. If your ceremony is going to be in a place other than where your reception is, for example like a church, you're going to want to put that one at the top of the list as well. Because again, while they might be able to do more than one wedding in a day, they can only pick one wedding for each time slot. Church can't do 3 2 o'clock weddings, for example. So you need to get the time of the wedding figured out, because everything's going to revolve around that, and then book your venues as soon as you can. So then you should follow the same logic for some of the other venues, other vendors. Who can book multiple weddings in a day, and who can book only one at a time? So a photographer, videographer, DJ, if you have a band for your reception, any kind of entertainers you're hiring, possibly even your makeup artist, can only work a very limited number of weddings, usually one in a given day. Now, there might be some teams of photographer or DJ, for example, who can book multiple weddings. Bigger companies can do that sometimes, but they can still only send a given individual to one wedding. So let's say you really like the photographer's work at your cousin's wedding, or the DJ at your friend's wedding was amazing. That person can only do one wedding in a day, so you need to prioritize them as well. So at some point between now and your wedding day, you're probably going to think about going to one of those wedding shows that they have. That's a pretty good idea, because you're going to be in one place with all the vendors you could possibly need for your wedding, and you may even find a few that you didn't know you wanted, but you think to yourself, that could be interesting. A few times I've seen some people rent a pile of doves that they can release after the ceremony. And aside from that one time where somebody got a wing to the eye, it's great. Don't worry, he was fine. No need for an accident report. No ambulance was called. So, go to a wedding show. You get tons of vendors you can speak to. The first thing I'm going to say is don't go alone. It's always best to go with a few friends, especially if you know someone who's been to these things before. They may think to ask certain questions that you never thought of, and the more information you can get on the spot, the better. Plus, you're going to be picking up a fair amount of promotional material from various vendors, so having a few extra arms to carry things won't hurt. Which leads me to point number 2. You're going to be picking up a lot of material. Some of it's going to be from vendors you don't really want to hire for your wedding. So the best thing to do is have 2 bags. I think I want to deal with this person later bag, and a probably not bag. So after you've dealt with each vendor, you can divide their promotional material up into the speak to them later pile and the don't speak to them later pile. And when you get home and you start sitting down with these things to figure out who you want to speak to further in a nice quiet setting to actually get to know them better, you'll probably have about half as much to go through, which will make your life a bit easier. Another thing you're going to notice at these wedding halls, especially the big ones where they have 20, 30 vendors minimum. The big ones are actually a couple hundred people. A lot of the vendors are going to have a bunch of contests that they want you to enter. You give them your name, email address, and or phone number, and they enter you in a contest for a heavy discount or a free thing, which is fine. Remember, you want to potentially hire these people, so you want them to be in touch with you so that you can see if they're right for your wedding. Sign up for everything, because anything free that you win is something you don't have to pay for, but don't sign for anything. By that I mean, don't decide on the spot to sign a contract to hire a given person for your wedding. It's a bit of a chaotic event at a wedding show. You don't necessarily have as much time as you would want with a given vendor, because remember, they're trying to deal with 20 people at a time as well sometimes. So don't sign for anybody on the spot. Anybody you think you might want to deal with, you can always contact them later, set up an appointment in their office. Sometimes they'll come to you, and you'll get a much better sense of whether or not they're right for you. So fast forward a few months, you've got your date picked, you've got your venue or venues booked, you've got all the vendors signed, everything's set, ready to go. All the invitations are sent out. Now you need to actually schedule the day itself. The first thing to do is you need to pick the actual time for the ceremony, because everything is going to revolve around that. Once that's set, you're going to want to schedule a meeting with your photographer, because that's the person who's going to be with you for the entire day. First thing you need to do for standard full day wedding, you need to figure out when you're going to start getting ready. A photographer usually goes to the groom first. They spend about 45 to 60 minutes there, taking photos of people getting ready, some candid portraits with whoever's there, sometimes little detail shots of shoes, rings, things like that. And then they head over to the brides for pretty much the same thing. It takes a little bit longer. Usually when I schedule a wedding, I schedule an hour and a half to roughly 2 hours with the bride, doing the same thing. Just some candid photos of them getting ready, portraits with whoever's there, a few detail shots here and there. And then it's off to the reception. Not the reception, it's off to the ceremony. You need to schedule enough travel time in between these things as well, so that nothing runs too late. You can be fashionably late for your own ceremony, just not too late. So once the ceremony is done, then it's off to wherever location you've picked for the portraits. So for family portraits, it usually takes 10 to 25 or 30 minutes, depending on how big the families are. And then the couple portrait session, anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes, depending on the setting, the lighting, the weather. If it's a really hot day, so the portrait session is usually a bit shorter. Because remember, bride's wearing about 95 pounds worth of fabric, the groom's wearing a black suit. If it's a 30-degree day in the middle of July, it tends to get a little hot. So once the portrait session is done, you're off to the reception. At that point, you're not on the photographer's schedule anymore. Now you're on the DJ schedule. So you're going to want to also sit down with your DJ at some point before the wedding to go over the schedule for the reception. Because you may have a lot of things going on during the reception. The more traditional stuff, first dance, parents dance, cutting cake, that kind of thing. You might also schedule some sort of entertainment, Irish dancer, mariachi band. I saw a stand-up comic once. So all these things need to be coordinated to be at specific times so that the DJ can then communicate this to the hall so they can schedule when they're serving the courses, because they need to know when these events happen so that they're not trying to serve a course while everybody's up and running around. It's just not the most efficient way to go. So once that's set, everything's set. All you need to do now is enjoy your day, but you need to remember that things are going to go according to schedule, but they're not going to go according to schedule perfectly. Some things might be delayed a bit here and there. Plan a little extra time for everything in between, and that'll take care of everything. And remember, it will work its way out. All those horror stories you hear about weddings going wrong, the reason you hear about them is because they're incredibly rare. 99% of weddings, and certainly every single wedding I've gone to, has pretty much gone exactly, almost, according to plan. So all you need to do is just sit back, relax, enjoy the day, and trust that your schedule is going to go the way it should. So once the reality of everything that you need to do for a wedding has set in, some people might think about hiring a wedding planner. This is not always a bad idea. It's great for some people, not great for others. If you're planning a small, simple gathering, not a huge full day affair, obviously you can schedule something like this yourself fairly easily. If you're planning some giant wedding with a few hundred guests and every kind of vendor you can think of, sometimes a wedding planner can help make these things a bit easier, especially if you don't live in the area where you're getting married. A wedding planner's already got contacts with vendors who are good, affordable, reliable, who know what they're doing. So if you sit down with a planner, they'll be able to come up with a pretty good list of people who they think will suit you best. And that gives you a short list right away. So you don't have to speak to 20 or 30 vendors. You might only need to speak to like 2 or 3 of each given style. One photographer, one DJ, 1 or 2 limo drivers. And especially, as I said, if you live out of town, planning a wedding in Vancouver, when you live in New York, it's not the easiest thing in the world. For example, if you sign one vendor, but then they have to pull out at the last minute, you have to travel all the way to meet one person to sign them for your wedding. So it's a lot easier to get these things done if you have somebody working for you who's already in that city. Then you just need to have some back and forth communication, email, over the phone. A lot of the time you can sign contracts electronically, so you don't even need to be physically present to do that. Send your deposits electronically. And you don't really need to be in the city where your wedding is, except to maybe view the hall and get everything set with the hotel. That's about it. So that's your take on wedding planners. Depending on the kind of wedding you have, they can actually be very helpful. That's pretty much it. One last word of advice. Weddings can be pretty overwhelming. Scheduling a wedding can be pretty overwhelming. Don't do it alone. You've probably got a lot of close friends and family members who would love to help you out, do some of the planning for you, maybe shortlist a couple of vendors, make your life a bit more easier. It can be a lot more efficient to do things that way, certainly a lot less stressful. The only thing is, let them help. Don't let them take over. A lot of us have that friend or family member who insists things have to be done the proper way, and the proper way, of course, just happens to be the way they would do it. So you do need to put your foot down a bit. Remember, it's your wedding. It should be done the way you want it to be done. But by all means, let them help. It'll make your life a lot easier. So that's pretty much it. And all you have to do now is enjoy your wedding.